of all, the great news is we are now open for the public. From Sunday through Thursday, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., you can actually come in the library. Yay! But we will be closed on Friday and Saturdays to patron traffic. So make sure you come between Sunday and Thursday from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. And we still have curbside pickup. So if you don't feel comfortable coming in the library yet, you still have that option. So our show today is about adult graphic novels. And we have Julia from Scott County Public Library, who's the curator of our graphic novel collection here, or the adult graphic novels. And she knows a lot about them.
I try. So I asked to be on bookends this week because March 1st through March 7th is Will Eisner Week. If you're not familiar with Eisner, he's often given credit for the term graphic novel, though that may not be exactly accurate. What is true is that his later works are often associated with that term. And what Eisner was really trying to get at was this idea that you could create a piece of art that was both words and pictures, but it really had in-depth concepts, things that, are really dealing with either real life or complex characters. We have awards named after Eisner every year, and so we're going to talk a little bit about some that have won recently or some notable ones. But I first want to start off with his well-known work. Some people, again, say this is the first graphic novel. I'm not here to claim an opinion one way or the other. But this is his Contract with God trilogy, The Life on Dropsy Avenue. And so the first of the trilogy is A Contract with God, and that's the one people think maybe was the first. But what it's about is it's a series of stories that are set in tenement buildings with Jewish immigrants. And so it really gets at these complex stories of life. And it kind of sounds a little like Chicken Soup and Soul, but it's not. It deals with joy or shame or sorrow. They're pretty intense stories. But if you are very interested in learning about the history of graphic novels, this is definitely the place to start. Let's see. So we also wanted to talk a little bit about other notable graphic novels for you all to try. And I think that if you are going to try to read graphic novels for the first time, probably your best bet would be the March trilogy. It's very accessible. You're going to feel like you learned something at the end because you did. Mm-hmm. And Jess recently read it too.
Yeah. We have all 3 volumes here at the Scott County Public Library. Actually, we have more than one copy of each. So I recommend putting it on hold and asking for it. It's the story, it's by John Lewis, Andrew Aiden, and Nate Powell. And it's the story of Congressman John Lewis's journey through the civil rights era and the civil rights movement. And it is a very fascinating glimpse into that history that everybody should learn.
So in March, there's 3 books in the trilogy. The second book and the third book, they both won Eisner's, in the category of reality-based works. One other thing to note about March, which I really like, is Nate Powell, as she said, is the artist. And if you start to get into these works, you'll realize that every once in a while, you need to look at the art before you necessarily check it out, because there'll be artists that really speak to you. Nate Powell is just one of those. Everything I see done by him is great. So just a little bit of advice, look at the art and see if that is going to be something you're going to want to actually read through the entire book for. Let's see. So we next wanted to talk about Stitches. Stitches is by David Small. It is a really good example of something called graphic medicine. Graphic medicine can sometimes be a comic book or a graphic novel that is a technical manual. It tells you how the body works or whatnot, but for the most part, it's a memoir. It's going to be a memoir about somebody who had a medical experience or a family member. And it tends to evoke strong feelings, generally of empathy. And so it's a very helpful tool actually for people who are going through something or know someone who is, or having trouble or feeling alienated from people who are dealing with health conditions. So the reason I chose to focus on Stitches is because it was very evocative for me. It's a true story, I believe, and it's about David Small when he was a young man. And he went in for surgery related to cancer. He wasn't told he had cancer. He was not told he was going to be coming out of that surgery without having, I think a vocal cord was removed. So he basically had very limited speech capacity after that, and he was never told this in any way. So it's not just a story about medicine, it's also a story about neglect, but it's moving. It's one of those books that just stuck with me for forever. So that is a really good example of graphic medicine and how powerful it can be.
Yeah, we have another that possibly could be considered graphic medicine. If you read, I don't know if any of you were lucky enough to read Allie Broch's Hyperbole and a Half. This is her book from 2013. And it is how she dealt with growing up, and she may be autistic or have ADHD and maybe some other issues there, but it's a wonderful book. It just had me in stitches with how she writes about dealing with these issues that were in her life that most of us can relate to anyway.
Yeah, I think there were some depression issues.
Depression issues, yes, severe depression. And then we didn't hear about her. She didn't write another book until very, very recently. And we find out why in her newest book, Solutions and Other Problems, also by Allie Broch. And this one covers how she deals with more serious issues like sudden death of a family member and divorce and a very serious illness. And she basically had all of these things happen to her all at once. So it's a little heavier read, but I highly recommend it, especially if you know anyone that's dealing with any one of these issues. You will find this book very helpful.
Yeah, I think we are starting with some of the more difficult to read titles and then ending with kind of the more fun ones, which segues to, this has not been highlighted yet in terms of Eisner Awards. It might be a little early for it, but this work, The Year of the Rabbit, by Tian Vyasna, hope I got that right. It did make the NPR Best of 2020 list. It is excellent. It is about his family during the reign of the Khmer Rouge. So for the folks who aren't familiar, this is, happened in Cambodia in the mid-70s. And it really gets into what happened with his family and then also the history of what was occurring at that time. So we kind of learn about it through their experiences. It's a tough read, but it is definitely impressive. I definitely think this is one of my favorite graphic novels that I have read recently. So I would strongly recommend it for anybody wanting to learn a little bit more about that.
And that's probably why we should point out here that all of these graphic novels that we're talking about are actually shelved in the adult collection. We've got adult nonfiction graphic novels as well as the fiction graphic novels that deal with heavier topics.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. I looked at a few other ones here. This was one of my absolute favorites. My son wanted to know about how our economy worked. And I found this graphic novel called Economics. Covers everything from the beginnings of Western economic systems with the invisible hand and all the way through Occupy Wall Street. It's got it all in here, and it explains it in terms that anyone can understand, and it's got great illustrations, great wit and humor, and It's a little bit lighter than these other ones that we've been discussing, but still, it's a wonderful way to introduce somebody to economics.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it.
And I think we also had some other ones that you had looked at as well, right?
Yeah, we've got this one I thought was just absolutely hilarious. Little less heavy, more on the light side. It's called Baking with Kafka, and it's by Tom Gauld. And the author is a comic writer for The Guardian, and he pokes all sorts of fun at the literary world. So if you love to read books, you will love to read these cartoons. And so I highly recommend this one. And then also, I read recently Guardians of the Louvre by Jiro Tanaguchi. And it's about a Japanese tourist who falls ill while he's in Paris. And as he's recovering, he decides he's going to take a tour of the Louvre over 5 days. And he has some strange, kind of semi-hallucinatory experiences while he's there. And it allows him to talk to some of the artists of the works that he sees in the Louvre, and also experience some of the history of what happened over the many, many years that the Louvre has been in Paris. So,
Yeah, that's what I haven't gotten to read yet. So
yeah,
I'm
and
excited.
beautiful, beautiful art. If you want to take a look at some of the beautiful art, it's absolutely beautiful. Highly recommend.
So the rest of the titles I wanted to talk to you all about, they kind of segue with the Guardians of the Louvre, which is, these are more the fiction titles. Real quick, Upgrade Soul by Ezra Clayton Daniels. This is a science fiction work. It's about an elderly couple who decide to go through an experimental treatment where they basically clone themselves. And so they're given this interesting choice of the clone is intellectually superior and in some ways physically superior, but they're kind of a blob. They're not a very attractive creature. And so it really is kind of dissecting what is self, who am I. You don't have to go to that level reading it. You can definitely just read it for an enjoyable science fiction story, but it does have those more philosophical undertones. It was the 2017 recipient of the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity. And, and I did forget, it was a nominee for graphic reprints category of the Eisner Awards. So it's a very interesting science fiction if you're wanting to think about the meaning of self. Now, Invisible Kingdom, I just finished, and it's a very different kind of science fiction. First off, it is also gorgeous. This is by, the artist is Christian Ward. I believe that the author is Willow Wilson. But Christian Ward has this way of showing space that is extremely psychedelic.
Wow.
So it's a very unique portrayal. And it's a story of both a cargo captain and then an initiate into a religious order at the same time finding out that there's a very dangerous secret going on. And so they're immediately in peril. So it's two stories, two very different people who are meeting. It's great. This really should be with the other sci-fis, but we are not going to be too picky about that. LaGuardia is also science fiction. It is excellent. It has both an Eisner and Hugo Award winner. It's by Nady Okorafor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Okorafor, yeah, one of my favorite authors.
So this is a story of, basically we have a Nigerian doctor who is smuggling in an illegal alien, but in this case it is an alien that looks like a plant. And so what's happened is there's a whole bunch of different aliens that have come down to the world and how everyone is dealing with that. I would highly recommend it. I enjoyed it both for the art and for the story. The other two I wanted to talk about, this is, I still say this is a fantasy, others would say it's a science fiction, whatever. Monstrous is a really good crossover. This would be a title I would recommend maybe to a 20-year-old. It often gets put in some young adult collections as well. And this has won the 2018 Best Continuing Series. It's actually won multiple Eisner Awards. It does have this very steampunk kind of feel to it, but it is set in an alternate reality version of Asia. And it is about the story of a war survivor named Maika Halfwolf. And she's kind of being hunted because she is one of the beings in this world that has magical powers. But at the same time, she has this very interesting connection to a monster. We're not sure, is she the monster? What is happening here? So that's kind of the major overwhelming story in this really interesting world. I also really have to say I love it because they have cats as not just cats existing, but kind of like as if cats were dwarves or elves. They have, the languages and the whole study of them. And so I very much enjoy any title that includes cats.
Me too.
And then the last one is Gideon Falls. This is a horror graphic novel. It is in my notes somewhere that I can't find it. It won Best New Series in 2019. And it follows a priest who's just come to Gideon Falls, and this kind of country town that's experiencing all of these murders. And at the same time, we get clips of a man in the city who obviously is dealing with some mental health issues, but he is searching everywhere and everywhere for this black barn, which also seems to be appearing in Gideon Falls. And so it's a very interesting tale. It's by Jeff Lemire. So anytime that you see his name on something, it's going to be worth checking out. So I would recommend this if you're very much into horror and looking for something. Once you're done with The Walking Dead, you got to move on. And so, so this is for you. Okay, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of titles today. Always feel free, check in with us, see if we have any ideas of different books coming out. So
yeah, and the good news is, of course, once again, you can come in and browse the entire adult graphic novel collection, or the rest of the collections too.
Yes, so excited.
Yes, it's very exciting. So we hope to see you soon, and we'll see you next time on Bookends, when we will be discussing classics of literature.